day, folks, and welcome back to Unfinished Business Television. This is kind of a special episode because we're talking about the thing you probably have been wondering. What is our top 10 list of 2023? Just in case you didn't know, I am the host of the show, Jeff Galashot, Unfinished B1. And with me, as always, is my co-host, technical support, and main man, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
I hope that was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd hate to see Sly Stallone do it. So we are going to go through our top movies of the year. We're going to start at the bottom, 10, and go to 1. But first, we're going to talk about maybe our most disappointing movies that we saw this year. There is no list for this. This is just like, we'll just like throw out some. Hopefully the other person has seen it. If not, well, you'll just have to take one person's word on it. So for most disappointing movies of the year, because I'm not going to say hate, and I'm not going to say bad, because what I might dislike, some other person might love. So one film I thought was very disappointing, Skinamarink. This is that kind of creepy pasta horror film. A lot of people were saying, oh, it's the scariest movie of the year. It's creepy. Maybe it would help if I had seen it in a theater. I did not. And I'm kind of happy I did not see it in a theater, because what it felt like to me was basically someone with a home video camera pointed at something out of frame, and then we hear a bunch of stuff and creepy stuff happening, and it's made to look creepy, and then, then it would go to another scary image, but then again, we're to the side. And yeah, we could call this an avant-garde. I could also call it an art installation more, but I just found it disappointing. It's an interesting film to talk about with film fans and in conversation, but for me, I found it mostly disappointing. Andre, by any chance, did you see this movie?
I did not. It sounds like it's cooked by Ragu.
Yes, it's better that you did not. What is a disappointing movie you saw in 2023?
Initially I was going to say Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, but to be fair, it has some bright spots, but it's still a big disappointment overall. To me, I think the worst of the worst personally was You People. And I know we talked about that in an earlier episode, but it's just like, Eddie Murphy is supposed to be on this big comeback trail. And when I first saw, oh, he's working with Jonah Hill, I was pretty excited about it until I saw the movie and saw how, blatantly offensive it was, especially when it comes to interracial couples, and the fact that it's a Kenya Barris script and a Kenya Barris direction made it even more of a crime. So that's the one of any movie of last year that just got me angry. And I, rarely do I ever get really upset. Indiana Jones didn't make me that upset.
Now my question, did Eddie Murphy do any press for this movie?
No, I don't think he did. Actually, no, he did a couple of interviews, like him, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but not much. Not like when he did Coming to America 2.
Okay, because one of the things is, other than maybe, reunion with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, he looked either angry or uncomfortable half the time. And I know that's supposed to be his character, but also, like, even in certain scenes, it didn't even seem like, like how normally when you watch a film, you could tell maybe that was an improv or that he's really trying to be funny in the scene. Even watching this film, it just seemed like he was like, yeah, I'm not really putting in too much effort here.
Yeah, and it's just one of those movies that we've already done this with Guess Who. We've done it with all these other films where, oh yeah, the white kid coming in with the black girlfriend, and are the parents going to get along, not get along, and cracking all these jokes. And it's just so tone deaf. And it feels like it came from people who live in a bubble in LA who think that's the way everybody else thinks in the country, and they don't. And on top of that, you have all these other talented people in there that are totally wasted. You have like Real Perlman for a few scenes. Elliot Gould has no dialogue. I mean, say what you will about Elliot Gould, whether he's a legend or you don't consider him a legend, but that's a big deal to have, and he barely has anything to do. And like, then the real offense was the now revealed CGI kiss at the end between Lauren London and Jonah Hill, which is just, COVID can't be an excuse on that front. That was just some bullshit.
And it just seems like now, after the film is done, everybody's trying to disavow it. It's sort of like, yeah, I don't know how you saw that, but, I needed the money. And the scary part is now you have Kenya Barris talking about how he wants to turn his, I guess originally a Richard Pryor bio film into a 10-part limited series written and directed by him. And
I don't want him involved. I think that has to be like a Spike Lee or a Ryan Coogler or somebody that could take it seriously and not be Kenya Barris. Because if I ever hear of another Kenya Barris pen script, sorry, Eddie Murphy, I'm staying away. I hope he didn't do rewrites of Beverly Hills Cop 4 because that would piss me off.
I would go as far as saying if Kenya Barris was producing or executive producing, I have no problem. But I would want somebody more along the lines like John Ridley, maybe doing, a Richard Pryor 10-part series. Because I also wonder, with these 10 parts, I know it's supposed to be throughout his life, but is it going to be like maybe Steve Jobs, where like each part is a significant day in his life and career? Or is it just going to be, basically a miniseries where it's like, okay, first 2 episodes, childhood. And next 2 episodes, being the clean comic. Next 2 episodes, becoming the dirty comic. Next 2 episodes, fame and the drugs. And, and then I guess the final episode, once he's gotten, Alzheimer's. Was it Alzheimer's or what?
Multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis and, dealing with that, but still, trying to work at the same time. But anyway, let's get off to our next one. That can be saved for a news episode. My next movie, again, this is not in any particular order, 65 with Adam Driver, where basically he comes from another planet, crash lands on Earth, spoiler alert, 65 million years ago, when dinosaurs ruled the land, and he finds like a cave girl who reminds him of, I guess, his departed daughter, and he's trying to get back to his world, but he has to go search for the needed supplies since the spaceship split up, and then deal with these dinosaurs. And it's written and directed by the 2 screenwriters who wrote A Quiet Place, and, this is their directorial debut. And while, as always, Adam Driver gives it 100%, this script just comes off very derivative and feels like a B movie. Like, this is something I would think of could have gone straight to streaming. It did not need to be in movie theater because it has that kind of, I hate to say this like it's an insult, it has that like Netflix quality, where it just seems like every half of the film is either CGI'd or aimed at trying to entertain the audience, but it never quite gets there, and it's not really trying that hard either. Did you by any chance see 65?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think you have to waste your time even checking it out. Is there any other movie that is on your most disappointing? I only have 2 more.
I would say Silent Night, John Woo's latest film or his attempted comeback in Hollywood. This was a movie that initially I was excited about because it seemed like it was a high concept idea to do a movie that's all action, no dialogue, and it's produced by the guys that did John Wick. And you got John Woo there, so, I've been a big fan of his work. But once again, Joel Kinnaman doesn't have any charisma. He is not that watchable on screen, and he just, like he has a hard time trying to scream and struggle. Like I'm having a hard time screaming and struggling watching him in this particular picture. And John Woo basically tries to restrain his style a little bit, not as much of the two-fisted gun shooting or white doves and all of his trademarks, but then he still has his moments where he wants to get very melodramatic and kind of takes away from what could have otherwise been like a really a cinematic masterpiece of an action film like John Wick, it just didn't play. You know, it's got some moments, but I left it kind of like, man, this was kind of like, I gotta wait for this on streaming.
Unfortunately, I did not see it, and once the bad reviews came in, I was like, okay, yeah, good that I didn't see it in theaters. My next movie, Ben Affleck had a good or interesting year because he had Air, which was actually really good, but then he also starred in this movie, which didn't even really get much publicity, and it is Robert Rodriguez's film Hypnotic, made on Robert Rodriguez's studio in Texas. This is a film, a sci-fi kind of film where he plays a detective who lost his daughter years ago, who went missing, and now he's on the trail of this man who seems able to hypnotize people into doing his bidding, and then he ends up tracking down another psychic to help him find out about this man who seems to know a lot about his daughter, and then it's not good even at that point. But then when we get to the halfway point, the film flips the script and it becomes even more ridiculous. And then, especially when they start explaining how certain things were done within the film, and it just looks like, basically a cheap set. And I mean, look, Ben Affleck's hit or miss usually in the acting department. And also, I was really looking for, because Alicia Braga is in it, and I am a fan of hers. But again, everybody in this film seems pretty much wasted, except for maybe William Fichtner, because he plays these types of roles all the time. Because this reminded me of his character in Drive Angry, also, up until the ridiculous twist. I would personally not recommend seeing it. I don't know, Andre, by any chance, did you see this movie?
No, I've been trying to get my hands on it. I have not.
Trust me, you don't want your hands on it. This is one of those where I think you could just take the loss. You'll be much happier. Is there any other film that was on your disappointing list?
I'll do one more, and that's Exorcist Believer.
And
yeah, that honestly, if you took Ellen Burstyn out of it, this could have been like any other knockoff of The Exorcist. It was okay, there was some interesting idea there to like, now it's a black family and tied to Africa, and there's this whole thing with this white girl and the black girl. They're possessed. They don't know what to do. But yeah, it gets illogically dumb. And then to bring Ellen Burstyn in felt like it was shoehorned. What's she going to do? Oh, she wrote a book. They think they could help with the situation. So she comes down. She confronts the girl. And then she gets stabbed in the eyes with a cross and is out of the movie for the third act. Just so they could shoehorn in, spoiler alert, shoehorned in cameo by Linda Blair, just so she could show up at the end to make forgiveness with her mom. That's about it. The rest of the movie is just, this could have been a straight-to-video flick. I'm like waiting for Russell Crowe to come out and say WrestleMania, because that's how bad this shit is. And thankfully, David Gordon Green must have listened to the audience, because he ain't doing the sequels, and they're probably not even going to get made.
Man, that sounds like, it reminds me of like Carrie 2, when there was all that excitement, even though it didn't really have any big stars. But Amy Irving was in it, and spoiler, and come on, it's been over 10 years since this movie came out.
And I remember when that came out, and the kid from Home Improvement who plays one of the bullies was making all this hype because, oh yeah, something happens to my groin in this movie.
And now he was never seen on the big screen again. But after that, it was like you killed the one remaining cast member, and she didn't really have much to do in the first place. I'm just like, yeah, that was just a bad movie. But I mean, behind the scenes, it had already had but we're not talking about Harry. That seems like a future deep dive. But anyway, my last film of most disappointing. I do not see what some of y'all are seeing in Saltburn. You know, it has nice cinematography, great location photography, and yes, it does have great actors in it. But ultimately, it just adds up to me emptiness, you know, and I just didn't like it. And if your movie has to create its lore in more film analysis on YouTube of imagined backstories or what the director is truly trying to say, that doesn't help because to me, if it was really a worthwhile film, you would be able to come away with something of your own analysis from watching it. You wouldn't need to go out there and find some kind of substance for it because that truly shows it's empty, at least to me. So I found the film hugely disappointing. It's not horrible. None of these films are horrible. Well, one, but I'm not going to say which one. But I just found it hugely disappointing and overrated just in general. But I do like the actors. So that's all I have to say about that. And just quickly, I want to put out two guilty pleasures. I know one of these movies we saw together, Megan, which was just greatly ridiculous, but totally fun. That I still think of the Megan dance. Though I will say, if you're going to watch a version, watch the R-rated or unrated version with the blood. We saw the PG-13 rated version, and it's just a little more ridiculous when you're seeing somebody stabbed, and it's like, but where's the blood? You know? And also, I know you didn't see this film, but please, guys, give a chance to the movie Joyride, the Asian American road movie with the four females, Ashley Park, Sherry Cola. It's worth your time. It's gross. It's heartwarming. It's hilarious. It's a female comedy. Give it a chance, you know, because that was one of the biggest surprises of the year because I thought it was hilarious. Unfortunately, it seemed like no one went to go see it. I saw it in theaters opening weekend, and I loved it. Is there any like guilty pleasures you want to throw out there before we get to the top 10 list?
Just one, and it's the documentary Milli Vanilli, which is on Paramount Plus. So everybody knows the Milli Vanilli story of these two guys who basically lip sang their way to success and the Grammy until they got exposed and it pretty much hurt their careers. But to see it from their perspective and go in depth with how screwed over they were right from the start, it's heartbreaking. And definitely for the surviving member to try to carry on the legacy, continue with his life, even after all the bullying he had to face in the industry. You do leave that documentary feeling like, okay, this guy had a little bit of talent. There's some hope that he was able to get his life together. Sadly, the other guy fell down on hard times and ultimately took his life. But I recommend that one for sure, just on the basis of if you're not familiar with Milli Vanilli and you're not familiar with the story, it goes really in depth and like behind the music, Radio's other like hour documentaries. This one really like hits home about the industry at large.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, do they show any of the footage from the behind the music special?
No, it's just all new stuff. Or actually, I think the one who died, there were some interviews with him.
Oh,
It was mostly all new stuff. Even they showed a full the press conference when they had to give up their Grammy and how like the press was eviscerating them. So they showed more of that other times when you've seen it in behind the music, they always just cut down to like little sound bites.
Mm-hmm. Do they show the sketch from like in Living Color?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now that brings us to our top 10 movies of the year. Andre, what is your number 10 movie?
My number 10 is John Wick Chapter 4. I think that, yeah, you know, they're obviously going to do a fifth. We know there's going to be the ballerina spinoff, but if this was the way to go out, I think they went out with a bang. Keanu Reeves, Donnie Yen, going to Japan, and that huge third act on the staircase. My God, it gave you everything you wanted and more. And Scott Adkins in a fat suit kicking Keanu Reeves' ass. I think it was a lot of fun. It showed that the franchise was not slowing down in any way, shape, or form. It was only just beginning to ramp up. I think, yeah, if you do another one, it's going to start to feel a little fatigued. So at this point, this is like the as high of a note that as I think this franchise is going to go. And I haven't seen the Continental, but I haven't heard anything good about it.
Yeah. Well, I saw John Wick 4 with you. It's on my top 20 list, but it is unfortunately not on my top 10. But it is just so much of an overload of action, but good action. Not, I mean, some of it's ridiculous. The stairful. It's like, come on, how many damn stairs and no concussion? And this is all before a fight. So, but it was good seeing like Clancy Brown in here, Ian McShane, the dearly departed. Now, of course, I can't think of it. Yeah, so it was just like, it's a great film. Definitely top. It's one of the better films of the year. As like with each film, they get better and better. And this one was like having a buffet. My number 10 film is the Australian film Talk to Me, the horror film. Not to be confused with the Don Cheadle movie. This is the movie where I guess it's like a hand, and they grab it, and then they can see the dead or contact the dead, depending on how long they hold the hand. And one girl whose mother committed suicide, she sees her mother during it, and then of course she gets obsessed with it and wanting to see it. And not everything is as it seems. And I thought it was a very effective horror film. One of the horror films to me that was like, heavily promoted, that was worth the hype that it presented. I can't say there were that many jump scares, but it's one of those films where afterwards you think about it a lot, and it's very effective and moody while you are watching it. And the lead actress is definitely a talent to be watched. I mean, she's done a few other things, but this is like her first leading role. And I think we're going to get more big things from her and the director. So, by any chance, did you see it?
I have not yet.
Give it a chance. I think you'd like it. I know you're iffy on horror sometimes, but I think you'll enjoy this one. Andre, what is your number 9 film? And
my number 9 is Reptile.
Really?
I was very surprised how much I enjoyed this movie, and I went into it with the lowest of expectations. But man, I feel like I haven't seen a good Benicio del Toro movie in a long time, and I think he delivered. And it was a smart thriller. It didn't completely fall into certain cliches, and at times it did, but it wasn't like anything that threw me off. It was like basically, it turned to a corrupt cop story tale. It turned into, this tale about infidelity and the questions of it, all the subtleties. Alicia Silverstone's very good in it. Yeah, Justin Timberlake's kind of a weak spot, but it kind of works for what what it's. If you want to see him get his ass kicked to get killed, yeah, it's worthwhile to see. But yeah, no, I mean, probably one of the better Netflix movies released this year, in my opinion.
I agree. It didn't make any of my lists though, but it is an enjoyable Netflix movie. And when you see, this is the type of thing or type of movie I feel like Netflix should be investing in, something of like quality where you don't have that, that many expectations or even good expectations, and it surprises the hell out of you as to the quality of it. That would like give you faith back into streaming movies rather than, let's say, something like Rebel Moon, where it's like you're already like, this doesn't seem like it's gonna go over well, So, but even though it didn't make my list, I agree. It's surprising. I think Benicio del Toro's good. Most of the cast is good. And, I agree with who you think the weak link is. But again, isn't that, maybe he was cast for that specific reason also. So considering his character. My number 9 film got a surprising number of Oscar nominations. American Fiction, and I really enjoyed this film. I read the book before the movie came out, and I liked that it kept its main themes and kind of softened from the book because the book was much more depressing and sad. This one plays more like a clever satire, even though it has its sad moments. I really enjoyed it because it was a story of a character and a story of a family, and then you have this satirical situation thrown in. Now, as I've said, and I wasn't shocked about this at the Oscar nomination, how it got Best Picture, but not Best Director nomination. Because I think you can tell it's a first-time director who directed this film, because the direction, while all the actors are good and the movie works, the direction is kind of flat. That's my only real complaint about the film, but it does deserve Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. And I really enjoyed it, and I really hope with this Oscar nomination, a lot more people will go out and check it out. Because, I mean, you got Jeffrey Wright finally getting an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, and you have my man, Sterling K. Brown, for Best Supporting Actor. And, you know I'm a big Sterling K. Brown fan, despite that Minister movie. No. So, Andre, did you see it yet?
I plan to. It hasn't been easy.
Okay. We'll definitely review it on a future episode. Andre, what is your number 8 movie?
My number 8 is Air.
Speaking of the Affleck.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I only vaguely knew of the Nike story with Jordan just from watching the Last Dance docuseries. And to see it now fully played out as a 2-hour movie, I thought it was stellar. The writing alone, especially Matt Damon with that monologue to Jordan about his whole future. I mean, I think we talked about it on an earlier episode. That's something that you're going to see in a lot of monologues for actors when they're going to auditions or they have to do some sort of thing like, self-tapes. I mean, this was just a rock solid, well-performanced film. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris Tucker in a very subdued kind of Chris Tucker role. Jason Bateman being in there. You have your all-star cast. Everybody works. The music works. And I like Viola Davis playing Michael Jordan's mother, how strong she came off. I'm glad they didn't cast somebody to physically play Jordan and have to, literally do dialogue. Just having the presence and the aura of this giant figure in those scenes is enough to kind of get the idea of, this, as much as it is about him, it's about a larger story about what he did to pioneer for other basketball players after him who were not going to get screwed over by the business anymore when it came to endorsements or just the league itself. So huge movie, and definitely one of the best of last year. I'm actually shocked that didn't get a lot of nominations, if at all.
I thought maybe Viola Davis would get a nomination, or maybe Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah.
I'm shocked too, because I remember when it came out, and this was like the front runner, and it was like it just slowly disappeared. I'll admit it's not in my top 10, but it is on my top 20 list of the year. So I really enjoyed the film, even though my minor quibble is Ben Affleck trying so hard to remind us, it's the 1980s. Look at this. That's the
Brazil pop theme,
Yeah. And, now Marlon Wayans is going to play in a thriller, playing a sports theme thriller now. So, now people were inspired by his performance. And like you said, I love Jason Bateman in this movie. I mean, Matt Damon, let's face it, he's dependable. We know he's going to give a good performance. And, Affleck, I think now he just likes working with costumes. Because, between this and the last duel, it's like he just likes this freaky looking chewing scenery when he's there.
He's got to have his fun, because you could tell nowadays when he's played Batman, he gets depressed.
Because he's always reminded of what could have been. It's like a Shakespearean actor who was forced out of Shakespeare before he got his full potential.
Kenneth Branagh.
For, for my number 8 film, I picked Zone of Interest. This is based on Martin Amos's novel. It's directed by Jonathan Glazer, who directed Under the Skin and also Birth. And I have to use a quote. My friend didn't see this film, but he's seen Jonathan Glazer's films before. And he's always said, I didn't necessarily like the film, but I keep thinking about it afterwards. And I feel like that's what Jonathan Glazer does as a filmmaker. I personally think, and this is going to be a bold statement, I think he could be another modern day Kubrick because he takes his time with his films. He doesn't necessarily go with whatever is popular. And it always feels like no matter what he directs, it's always experimental. And the scores are always on point. And with this film, it's basically watching as this family of a German officer tries to live, their daily life, like a suburban life in Germany, when they're while he works at the concentration camp next door, And so you have all these screens, shots, and like all these like ashes going in the air. And, the family never even really acknowledges it. And wisely, to make us even feel more like a witness, this film barely has any close-ups. So we're always viewing this family kind of far away, but we're in the room with them. And seeing some of the behavior of the wife towards, like their Jewish servants is scarier than anything the concentration camp officer has to deal with. And the way they discuss their plans for what to do with, the Jewish prisoners, it's like a business deal more. Like they're not even human to them. They're more like cattle. And I think it's a highly effective film, but I'll warn you, it's not for everyone. It's very like experimental, but it's a film that you're not going to get out of your head. And it's another film that got quite a number of Oscar nominations. By any chance, Andre, did you see it?
I have not.
Okay. So Andre, what is your number 7 film?
And my number 7 actually literally just made my top 10, and that's The Holdovers. That was another one that I just had. I knew it would be good, and I didn't have like the highest of expectations of it. I like Alexander Payne's work, and I think Paul Giamatti should have gotten an Oscar a long time ago. But man, this was actually something that not only resonated, it was just amazing. I mean, just the performances and, Paul Giamatti thought was going to be a certain type of personality, and it turned out there were a lot more flaws with his characters. The tenured professor, that he wasn't as, high and exquisite as you thought he was. And Divine, I forget her name.
Divine Joy Randolph.
Divine Joy Randolph, again, solid and not your typical, she's not the black savior. She actually has a lot of issues herself. And the fact that those two characters, along with the young man, all seem to find themselves through each other, it just made it worthwhile. And I'm also glad the whole movie wasn't set entirely in the school, that they actually were able to get out and branch out, and that helped to kind of expand the scope, because it could have probably still worked with just them, the whole movie being in the school during the holiday season, but that just made it a little bit more interesting to get them out of there and to see how that movie evolved from, it's going to be a bunch of kids in this boarding school or prep school, and Paul Giamatti is going to be the guy watching over them, and then it's just the one kid. Then they go to Boston. I like the way it flows and moves, and that's what made on my list.
Yeah, it's like a not modern day, but it's like a Hal Ashby film where it's more about characters. And see, this is what I was talking about with Air, for instance. It's made in the style of a 70s film, the time it comes out with, but it doesn't need to keep constantly throwing references to remind you. It just feels, has that feel of the 1970s and its setting, and I appreciate that. And like I said, Paul Giamatti's excellent as always, and I like that it kind of has a somewhat happy ending, but it's not a feel good story. I appreciate that. It really is a coming of age story because we don't know if necessarily the characters are going to go on to bigger and better. It just stops at this point in their life. And I was glad you said Divine Joy Randolph, because I was gonna say please don't say Divine Brown. Who's famous for another. This made my list higher than yours, but I'll wait till we get to that to show where it is. But it is definitely not my number 7. My number 7, I am shocked it was actually this low on the list. Pillars of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese. Look, it is a great, excellent film. It's beautiful filmmaking, beautiful acting. It's a very important story, but my only problem, maybe it's just me, because, we all know I worship at the altar of Scorsese, but it also felt like a film which is surprising that he put so much heart into it in co-writing the screenplay, but it felt a little bit for him on autopilot. I guess because we're not getting, necessarily those jump cuts, those, visuals and camera angles that we're so used to from him. But then again, this is more of a traditional story than any of his other films. It's not something where he's like calling attention to himself or to anything else in the film, because it's more focused on this situation and story. But I do appreciate that at the end, it has that kind of ending where you don't necessarily see anything. It's all told through radio play. And I thought that was a, interesting and original element. And I know you've seen Killers of the Flower Moon, so.
Yeah, and I'm actually rated a little bit higher, but.
Oh, okay. So we'll get to that. Well, we'll hear your thoughts on it when we get to your placement of it. And okay, so Andre, what is your number 6 movie?
My number 6 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh my God, that's where I put the same. That's my number 6. Okay, yeah. you tell me why you put it at number 6, and then I'll go and tell mine. And
I knew, because the first one was so amazing and felt like a love letter to Spider-Man, that this was going to be just as good, especially if it was going to lead into another story. But I think what I was amazed by was not just, we're going to have more Easter eggs. It's like we're going to double down on that. But more importantly, it was the idea of the thorough line with every character having a tragedy in their life, like an Uncle Ben or someone like an Uncle Ben in their life that they lost. And this is the one that's trying to prevent that from happening. And it just raised the dramatic stakes so much that when it got to like the shocking conclusion, it's like, okay, now we know where this is going, what this is really about. And I think that, the things that you thought were a joke in the beginning are not a joke. And I think that's what, just from not even the animation standpoint, the animation we know is solid, but the storytelling, I think, really sells this thing a great deal. I would probably rate it higher if it wasn't for certain other movies, but definitely, I think, for anything Marvel related, this was the best Marvel movie of 2023.
Yes, I agree. I agree with everything you said, but what I also liked about this film, like you was one of the main points you said, like the first film had its stakes, but here the stakes are so much higher that you care so much more, and you're actually worried like, this could actually end very badly. Whereas in the first film, you knew he's going to save the day. He's going to get through this. And I don't know if this is intentional or if this is just internet bluster, but I also like supposedly these little hidden clues that like maybe Spider-Girl might be trans or at least LGBTQ. So I like that little thing, like you said, they just added everything from the Spider-Man lore and just doubled down on it through this. And, even like the Donald Glover casting, you have that like little Easter egg. The meme where they're all the Spider-Men are pointing at each other. Um, I just really love this film, and I'm sad that it's going to take another 2 years to see, the finale, but it gets your hopes up. And just like when they did the Batman Lego film, you know, this is how it's supposed to be done. It's not as cutesy as that film, but it does dive deep into some villains. But like I said, like you, I thought it would be higher. In fact, when I originally made this list, I totally forgot about it. And then when I was looking over like my notes of all the films I saw this year, I was like, oh my god, I forgot all about that film. So that is why it is my number 6. What is your number 5? Let's see if we matched again.
My number 5 was The Burial with Jamie Foxx.
No, it did not.
Again, just like Reptile, I went into it with like moderate expectations, not knowing what to expect because, Jamie Foxx tends to be hit and miss. And I came out of it feeling like, man, this guy should have been nominated for an Oscar, which surprisingly he wasn't. But I loved the story. I loved his performance. I thought Tommy Lee Jones was great. I thought that just the way that story was presented and the energy that it had, I haven't seen a good courtroom drama in quite a while, and this certainly, I think, made it pretty high on my list because of that. And it had a feel-good tone to it as well. It wasn't like a depressing kind of movie. It was sort of like, no, it's, taking on the system. And for that's why I put it in my top 5, because it really was one of those movies I came out and said, I really enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it too. It made my honorable mention list, and on my odds and ends list on cinephilestv.blogspot.com, I put it down as Jamie Foxx is one of my favorite performances of the year. Because I really felt like he inhabited that character, kept the film lively. I mean, everybody in the film works for their own different reason, but ultimately, it is a good film. This could have been released theatrically. That's how good it was. Yeah. And it was surprising because, like you going in, I was like, is this just like another star-studded, straight to streaming movie? And I'm glad it hit it out of the park, and especially with how, the health crisis Jamie Foxx had this year. To me, this was, kind of part of that comeback. I mean, obviously, he filmed this before his health crisis, but it helped remind you of what a talented actor he is and how we need him back on the screen. This and one of the better parts of They Clone Tyrone, So I really liked it. I liked that Tommy Lee Jones played a likable character this time. It was nice to see the same Smollett girl in this film and still looking beautiful and still a great actress in a more adult role, other than in that Tyler Perry movie. So I really enjoyed it. But my number 5 movie, I'm shocked it will reach this high, but when I had to think of like favorite films of the year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. When I saw it, it was my number 1 movie. So it worked its way down. But this film really affected me, and especially, like you said, this is one of the better, well, like you said about Spider-Man, this is another one of the better Marvel movies of this year, and kind of a swan song, at least for the characters for now. And it went out on a good note, I think it has one of the best Marvel villains in a while. The guy, if he hadn't played this role, I'd be like, hey, let's have him be a variation for Jonathan Majors' gang. He was great. I even liked the stupid little story of Rocket Raccoon's origins. Yeah. With that heart-tugging emotional. And I'm going the heck for this. It's the best Bradley Cooper performance this year. Yes, I saw Maestro. So I'm like, he was better in this than anything else this year. Chris Pratt, when he decides to make a film, he's good. I kind of like how they worked in Zoe Saldana's character or variation of her character. Um, I didn't really care about Cosmo the dog. That was still stupid to me. But, I just liked it. And it got me. And because it reminded me of like moving on. Like, let's say you grew up with a group of friends. They weren't necessarily your best friend, but you formed a tight little crew. And then now, you all have to go your separate ways. It's not like you're going to call each other all the time, but you're always going to remember them for the rest of your life because they meant so much to you at that time. And you've been through so much together that you can't ever replicate that with anybody else. Be it, friend group, maybe a work group, or if you want to, even as a filmmaker, that crew you went on that adventure making that film with, who you might cross paths here or there, but it'll never be as tight as it was during that time. And so that's what it translated to me. And that is why it is like so high on my list. Yes, anybody out there, yes, I chose a Marvel movie. And you know what? It got nominations, so F all y'all. So, Andre, what is your number 4 movie of the year?
I wanted to rate it much higher, but I have to say Killers of the Flower Moon.
Actually rating it higher than me.
Yeah, I'm with you with like the length issues and maybe it was overbearing at points, but I still felt for it. I mean, I think I came out of it angry just from the crimes that were being committed to the natives, and I started thinking about my grandmother on my dad's side, and thinking about, her upbringing and just her health issues at the end of her life. That's how much it affected me. That being said, De Niro does his De Niro thing. DiCaprio is good, but I probably would have been more interested if he had played the FBI agent. So if they had swapped roles, that probably would have made it more interesting. Now that when I really think about it, I know everybody has the issue with Brendan Fraser. I thought, okay, at least he's getting the comeback. I don't care if he's overacting, but Lily Gladstone is probably the star of this whole thing. And the one that, if anybody should get an Oscar, it should be her coming out of this picture, because she just was steady and captured the emotions of that story perfectly. And, Scorsese does no wrong as far as I'm concerned, but she is the standout of this whole thing.
Yep. And she's actually non-binary also, even though she's nominated for Best Actress. But, I love the film. She is great in it. I think also, her name, I can't think of, but the one who plays her more wild sister, I think she was also excellent in this film. And I can understand why she didn't get a nomination, because she's not in a lot of the movie, but she's definitely an actress who should get more work. And I also have to give it a hand, other than, the star casting. Everybody who plays, like, let's say, an accomplice to all of this, they look period perfect, Yeah. So I have to, the casting director, I have to give them credit for this film. And like I said, it's, to me, better than Irishman. But like I said, it just didn't get past 7 for me. I'm sorry. Sorry, Scorsese. My number 4 movie is Past Lives. This is by writer-director Celine Song, starring Greta Lee. Beautiful. I've always remembered Greta Lee from her small role in the Amy Poehler, Tina Fey movie Sisters. And I was just like chomping at the bit that she played a lead role. And I'll admit, at first, I wasn't sure about this film because, watching the trailer, I'm just like, this looks like, a Before Sunrise ripoff. But it's so much more than that. I mean, it takes its time and it goes over the years, and it will remind some people of Before Sunrise. But this one, to me, is more heartbreaking, because with Before Sunrise, the characters are getting to know each other. These characters have known each other over time and are getting finally a reunion and wondering, like, what would have been, what could have been. But ultimately, unfortunately, spoiler, what can't be. And it's just so highly effective. And I love Lily Gladstone. I love Emma Stone, but Greta Lee deserved to be right alongside them as some of the top female performances of the year. And, you know, while the film got nominated for a bunch of awards, she wasn't nominated, you know. And I have to say, for anybody who hasn't seen it, take the chance, watch it. It's a heartbreaking love story, but it's so worth it. And I wasn't shocked to find out that Celine Song is a playwright too, because watching it, it's like it has that feel, but it also has such a beautiful, composed visual flair that I would suggest anybody, if they can see it, definitely go out and see it. It's worth it. By any chance, have you seen it?
No.
I say give it a chance. You know, maybe not on Valentine's Day. You know, pick a happy film for that day. So Andre, what is your number 3 movie?
My number 3 is Oppenheimer.
Wow, number 3. Okay.
Powerful. You know, Christopher Nolan finally made a comeback after that horrible Tenet movie. I think Cillian Murphy was definitely worth having the nomination for Best Actor. Cinematography is tight. Robert Downey Jr. is great in it. Got his nomination. Great sound effects this time around. No, weird mixing issues. And, and I like that it takes its time. And then there's all those little layers, like with Florence Pugh's character, with the ties with the Russians. And, it wasn't just, oh, this is the guy who made the bomb. It's like the before and the aftermath of it, the politics that happened afterwards, and setting up for the kind of scares we have these days, when it comes to the threat of nuclear war. So, I think Nolan hit all the right notes. He balanced it out really well. Were there some celebrity castings that were a little bit much? Yeah, but it works for what it is, and I think that it's definitely one of the best movies he's done in a while, and, it rated pretty high on my list.
I just think of the Barbieheimer competition. I also forgot to mention this about Killers of the Flower Moon. Everybody who complained that these movies were too long, I'm like, I didn't feel it, because that's how immersed I was watching these films. I agree with you, like with the celebrity cameos after, I was like, am I watching a Robert Altman movie, or am I watching an Oliver Stone movie? It's like, oh, there goes that person. There goes that person. I'll admit, the biggest, like, castings in this movie weren't even necessarily the big stars. It was like Josh Hartnett. It's like Casey Affleck. You haven't been on film in a while, I mean, Matt Damon, well, at least he had a more meaty role. But, like, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, like, when you start getting, like, Gary Oldman all of a sudden, it's like, huh? And I don't know why really Rami Malek was in this movie, but okay. So he didn't have much to say. But this film is on my list, but I ranked it a little higher than you. So I'll say my piece then. But the only thing I have to say is, F all you audience people, because I did not ever get to see it in the IMAX 70mm, because every show was sold out. So, I mean, when I was younger, I definitely would have seen it. So I didn't get to see it in all of its glory. I did get to see it in 70mm, just not in IMAX. But you know what? It was totally worth it. One of the best film experiences of my life. And you skipped one important point that me and you both agreed on. I don't know if it's something in the water, but Florence Pugh was freaking hot in this movie.
Do any accent. That's amazing.
Yeah, because I was like, whoa, that's Florence Pugh? I don't know, some sultrier. Maybe I just like suicidal chicks. Because I was like, well, I'm looking at her in a totally different way. I'm looking at her the way people were supposed to look at her in Don't Worry, Darling.
This was really about the atomic bomb?
It was about a bomb.
Exactly.
I'm like, how is Emily Blunt playing the other role? I'm like, and how did Emily Blunt get nominated? You know, she's just in alcoholic, like, I'm bitter. She's role. Great film, and she's good in it, but I'm just like, you nominated for that? Okay. But anyway, my number 3 movie is the movie you had already said, The Holdover. Um, I really enjoyed it. I wish I had seen it in theaters. I saw it on Peacock, but I think it might have gotten higher if I had seen it in theaters. Because I was like, just watching it, I'm thinking, oh, this will be a fun film. But I'm like, surprised at how much I'm getting into this film. And luckily, it never goes the way you expect it to. And I appreciate it for that. And this is definitely a comeback from like downsizing for writer-director Alexander Payne. And everybody deserved all the award, certification they got. Though I was shocked they didn't nominate Dominic Sessa, but maybe it's because it's his first role and he's not really, before this, a professional actor. So, so Andre, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. What is your number 2 movie of the year?
My number 2 is The Iron Claw.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be your number 1.
No, my number 1's going to be a shocker for people.
Okay.
This is my number 2 because I know the story. I know the tragedies. Yes, there were things that were left out. Yeah, there was a bad impression of Ric Flair, but I still think it hit all the right notes. It told the story as it should, with all these sad tragedies, and Kevin being the surviving brother that basically has the weight of all of it on his shoulders and still manages to come out of it on the other side. But just seeing what the business had done to this family, I think Sean Durkin really just did an amazing job portraying that in a very honest light. And Zac Efron was just, I still think he might have been juicing, but I thought he was very good in it, as was Jeremy Allen White. And the one who played David in the movie, I thought was also excellent.
Dickinson?
Yeah. We didn't really talk much about him, but I thought he was excellent too, especially being the one that wanted to be like the brother that had, like, he wanted to be a rocker rather than getting into the business, and the tragedy that happens with him. It's all heartbreaking. And Holt McCallany, I'm surprised. This movie should have gotten some nominations of some sort. I guess because it was a late release, it just got overlooked. But everybody was so good in this movie that it shocks me that they didn't even recognize it.
I didn't put it on my top 20 list. It's on my honorable mention list. But I think that's because the real tale is so, like, much bigger and so heartbreaking. So as somebody who's, I'll say I'm a wrestling fan of the past, it just urged me, like, you're not getting the full story, though. You're getting the gist of it, but you're not getting the full story. And everybody is good in this film. I was shocked Maura Tierney was in it, because I didn't even know she was going to be in it. And, it's highly effective, but like I said, it just, I guess maybe because I remember I got into the Von Erichs through Texas Tornado. So that's how I learned about them. And I was such a fan of that wrestling character, and then finding out the true story that, maybe the film just didn't explode in my imagination as much as the true story. So I'm like, you're missing out on this. But like you said, I give the cast all the accolades. The filmmaking is great. Even like the minor roles, like I said, the guy who played, I guess, the announcer and was part of building up that circuit, I thought he was excellent and period specific. Lily James was, she's good because she's our entrance into this world. So she's the outsider who learns to be an insider into this world. And so I like the film. It just didn't have, as you would say, didn't have enough juice to make it to my top 20 list. My number 2 film is Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos. I feel like with each film he makes, each film is better, and goes back to his experimental roots, not roots. And this is one of Emma Stone's best films because it's asking of her more physically, mentally, just everything. And the weird thing is, it's a comedy, and sci-fi film comedy. It's also an all-star film if you're a movie fan because you say, oh, Margaret Qualley, Rami Youssef, what's his name, Gerard Carmichael, but Mark Ruffalo is the only other actor who steals the show in this movie, and you have Willem Dafoe here, but his character comes off as dramatic, but so much a comedic buffoon that you can't help but be charmed by him. And I think this film is like by far great. You could tell that the sets are, on a soundstage, but it still feels epic. There's a lot of sex in this movie. As like, it's a learning experience about the joys of life, and learning what it is to be a woman in the society back then. And then you have Christopher Abbott, who comes in the last 20 minutes and almost steals the film, But all around, it's a great film. I still am maybe more particular to The Favorite more than this, and I'm not a person who was a big fan of the movie Dogtooth, his first film. But like I said, each film, I feel like he's gotten better. And this was a good play on Battle of the Sexes and a woman's role in society. And it still also managed to be fun. And I definitely highly recommend this film because it was a film, I don't know, where you're watching, you kind of get absorbed into it and into that world where nothing seems absurd to you. And this is pretty absurd. So I definitely highly recommend it. By any chance, did you see it?
I plan to. I haven't yet.
Okay. And we've come to the end of our list. So, Andre, what is your number one movie of the year?
My number one movie, I was going back and forth between This Killer of the Flower Moon is my number one, but it hits the heart. So fuck all those pretentious film buffs that are out there that watch this and probably dislike our videos, because this one hit me the most. It's the Super Mario Brothers movie. Okay.
Ah,
Super Mario. Yes.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen a movie in so long that had me smiling from beginning to end, from the time the Nintendo logo hits to the very end when they're playing more of the music from the game. It just had everything that you would have wanted in a Mario movie that 1993 movie didn't have, because they didn't know what the hell they were doing back then. Here, yes, you have setups for like a bigger universe of Nintendo movies to come, which I do hope will happen. And there's nothing original about the story. It's pretty simplistic, but still, it got things right in terms of telling that story. Chris Pratt's voice did not distract me at all. Once I got into it, I believed him as Mario. I believed Charlie Day as Luigi. I believed Anna Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach. It just works. And then having Donkey Kong in there with Seth Rogen and playing the Donkey Kong country music when he comes out, I thought that was really cool. And I don't go to animated movies to the theaters that much, but this one I had to make an exception because I grew up on Mario. I played all the games back when I was a kid, up until the days of the Super Nintendo and the N64. And, it's been a long time coming for something like this. And I know Nintendo held out for a very long time to adapt another game to screen because they did not want it to be screwed up. And I think they did the right call going to Illumination and make it an animated film rather than trying to do it live action again or even motion capture. I mean, that would have been weird. But here, it just was a pleasant movie. Nothing offensive, no politics. It's just fun for everybody, whether you're a little kid that plays Nintendo now, like the DS or the Switch, or if you grew up with it like I did or your age group. And it's just fun. That's all that you want from a movie like that. So that's why it was my number one this year. Plus, the bar was so low. This has been a crappy year for movies. So if you got something that hits you in the heart like that, it's got to be your number one.
It's not on my list, but it is on my honorable mention list. Like you, I'm not the biggest animation film fan, but obviously other than Spider-Man, but I really enjoyed this film. But I guess another reason why a lot of people dislike this film, I can understand, because they thought they were going to go see a movie that was for them and they're adults. This is obviously made more for, kids, but it also appeals to the fans because, like you said, it includes all the classic, like, Nintendo characters, shout out to other, games like Donkey Kong Jr., and stuff like that. And like you said, I thought that was fun and cute. And I enjoyed it for what it was, and I appreciated it because this was the film that should have probably come out in 1993, though the animation wouldn't have been as good. But, I enjoyed, like you said, what's his name? Chris Pratt didn't really, make me be like, hey, that's not Mario. And I really like Charlie Day as Luigi personally. I enjoyed the movie. Like I said, I have nothing against the movie. It's just, like I said, it's more in my honorable mention because it's more for me a nostalgia trip where I'm just like, oh man, this brings you back to childhood, man. Because I like any Mario game out there. I'll always be one, even though I don't buy any systems anymore. But, those are like my favorite. Super Mario Kart is still one of my favorite video games to this day. So, yeah, unfortunately, I did not put it on my top 20. It's on my honorable mention. And my number one is a movie we already talked about, Oppenheimer. That was a film that just, again, totally absorbed. I was totally glued to the screen, absorbed. I can point out the few faults it has. Like, I guess I expected more from the explosion scene. That didn't hit me as hard. But I loved the score for this movie. I loved all the actors, seeing Olivia Thirlby in a movie again, even though she has a small role. David Krumholtz in this movie, and like you said, since Tenet was not favorable, Kenneth Branagh kind of redeeming himself in this movie. And then just like the late reveal of Robert Downey Jr. as the ultimate villain. And we're thinking he's trying to help tell the story of Oppenheimer. I'm just like Jason Clarke just being a dick. Those trial scenes is just like, I just appreciate this film all around. Dale DeHaan as like the general's, assistant who's secretly, in cahoots. And another guy who's having a great year, Alden, however you say his last name.
Ehrenreich.
Yeah, like as a person who's like realized, like, you're like Robert Downey Jr., you're like this corrupt motherfucker. I lost all respect for you. Then he's in Cocaine Bear, which was not the best.
But yeah, surprisingly, that was another disappointing movie, side note.
Yeah, but he was one of the better at, like, I want to see a film with him, Ray Liotta, and O'Shea Jackson Jr. Just a separate movie. Like, if they ever made a sequel, I'd just go, focus on that. Ray Liotta. Rest in peace. Both him and the character. And maybe you could also take Isaiah Whitlock Jr. And put him, if there was a sequel, even though, his character. And the hot, corrupt cop in that movie with the braids. Yes. But anyway, back to Oppenheimer. We'll just put that under our disappointing movies. But Oppenheimer, definitely a must-see. And since now, with streaming, it's under attack. If you love this film, buy it on 4K DVD Blu-ray so you can always go back and watch it. Because this is a film that I have a feeling, I know in the future people are going to say it's overrated, but I think it's a modern cinematic classic. And you have to keep in mind, I'm choosing this over a Scorsese, so it must be good. But maybe also I'm just like, this is so much better than Tenet that I got to give him points. And apparently the Oscar voters agree. Now, the movies I didn't see, if anybody's upset that we didn't mention these movies, I will admit, I didn't see Anatomy of a Fall. I didn't see Ferrari. I really wanted to.
Me too.
I did not see Napoleon. I did not see Andre favorite Dream Scenario. I did not see Silent Night, which we discussed a little bit of. I didn't see Wonka, and I did not see Sofia Coppola's Priscilla. So those are like the big movies that I did not see. But that is our 2023 favorite, best of, whatever you want to call it list. And, as always, we have plenty of business to attend to, or unfinished business to attend to. But I have to ask, have you seen Babylon? If not, why not? Because it is fucking awesome. Andre, other than the movies we've discussed today, what movie would you recommend to the people? And
have you seen Society of Snow? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
I still have to catch that. And that, folks, is our 2023 list. So we'll see you soon with the 2024 movies and news that there is in deep dives. And hopefully some Melissa Barham news. But until then, well, I can't say the balcony is closed, but that concludes this episode.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.